Ruger SR45. It's a 10+1 striker fired double stack. If you want to get one of these, you're going to want to get it soon. I picked this one up for $300. Stainless was $350 because they're discontinued, but they still have old stock. The Ruger American line, I believe it's called, has replaced this, so these are on sale, but there's not very many left. So what is it, February, March now, 2020. So if you want to grab one of these, you don't want to sleep on it. So first thing I noticed about it, messing with it at the house, the trigger, so it's a striker fired, right? But the trigger, there's no take up. That's just, well, let me rack the slide here. Alright, so anyways, there's no take up on this trigger.
Just wanted to point out, guys, that the Ruger manual states do not dry fire the gun.
You know,
without
you got your little safety switch there,
inserted.
But you know, most guns, it goes back a little bit and then it stops, and then that's where it's ready to fire after you go beyond that point, you know, whether or not there's any play. But this one doesn't have any take up because it pulls this striker pin here back. So it's kind of weird. It's almost like a double action, but it's not. So there's a lot, like I said, no take up. That's it. It's just firm right off the bat. You pull it back some more and some more and some more, and then it finally goes off. Now that's because you're pulling back this striker with that trigger. Watch it go back as I pull it back. And then it drops it. So I don't particularly care for that because it doesn't give a really precise trigger that way, because you can't like pull it back and then, all right, it's ready to go. You actually have to pull that striker back with that trigger. Now with that being said though, the trigger's also a little bit heavy, but it's not as heavy as a double action. I believe the stats on it was actually 6.6 pounds, or yeah, something, 6 pounds 6 ounces. That's what it was. So it's not terribly heavy, but it is a little heavier because of that. But it's smooth. So I've noticed sitting here pulling the trigger, when it does go, it doesn't cause me to jerk or anything like that. So I don't think it's going to affect accuracy that much. And actually, my first shots with this pistol were at 100 yards, and we were hitting the target. So I don't really like the trigger like that, but it doesn't seem to really mess me up. So now we're out on the pistol range, and we'll see how I do with it. But I don't think it's going to be that big a deal, even though I don't particularly care for it. So it's a 10+1 capacity, but the grips, they're really narrow. It's not any wider than like a 1911, which is a single stack. So, and it does double stack a little bit. So it gets a little wide, and then down here they zigzag so that it holds 10. But the grip's real narrow for being a double stack. It's about the width of a 1911 if you're familiar with those. You got an ambi safety, you got an ambi mag release, and there's your little takedown thing you got to line up. We'll show that later, but I want to quit talking now and get to shooting. The last one's a little stiff, but it does come with an assist mag loader, so 9's alright. That 10th one's kind of a bear, but if you need to, it comes with this. Also, loaded chamber indicator. You see when there's a round in the chamber, it comes up, it's red. Some people like that feature. The only thing I'll say is that with a fully loaded mag, it's kind of hard to rack the slide, because this lever here, it drags on that shell, so it gives you some resistance. Doing it like this, it's a little hard, but if you grab it with your hand like that, it's not really much of a problem. But if you try to load your pistol like this, it does give some resistance. Alright, so I'm shooting really high up here close range, but this has an adjustable sight. It's spring loaded. Just see it move right there. So I need to adjust this some. Thankfully it's adjustable, which is also really awesome for a pistol in this price range. I can actually adjust elevation, so if I'm shooting high or low, or even if you don't want a 6 o'clock hold and you want to change it to a 12 o'clock or somewhere in between, you have that option with this. So it's shooting high for me right now, so I'm going to adjust this. Alright, so I adjusted this down quite a bit. I still got more room, but I got it on about a 6 o'clock hold now, so should be able to hit the targets. Alright, still a little higher than I want it. Going too fast. Come over here. Those targets need painted. It's like those ones that are so dirty and gray, they're blending in with the mud. I'm gonna fix that. Alright, let's try this again. That low target, I think you're gonna have to get behind me. Still go over it?
I didn't even see where that went.
I think it went slightly left. Alright, fuck that. Yeah, I shot it. 100 yards. I'm gonna release a little 100-yard video of it. Pretty accurately. But like I said, that trigger, not a huge fan of it, but I guess it's affected me a little more than I thought. But let's see how it does with a self-defense situation. Yeah, I don't know. I was for the price, you can't get a 45 unless you want to buy a high point. You can't get a 45 for really under like 450 bucks, 500 new. So, I mean, even when these were new, they were going for like 354. So, for what it is, can't really complain. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of that trigger. I was a huge fan on the range, hitting the targets 100 yards, but that's off of a bag. So, yeah, because it's so heavy and so long, it's almost like a double action trigger. And if you're familiar with double action triggers, it's kind of hard to be accurate with them. You got to pull them all the way back until they're about where you know it's going to go off, and then, you know. But when you're trying to be quick, double action sucks. So, like I said, it's not exactly a double action, but it's kind of working the same way where you're pulling the hammer back with the trigger the whole time, so you got a long, heavy pull. Only on this one, you're pulling the striker back, which is weird, but if you want a budget 45 that's not a high point, there you go. And it's super accurate. It's just hard to be accurate with that trigger. From a rest, no problem. A rapid fire, okay. If I take my time and pull through that trigger first until about where I think it's going to break, I can hit my targets. But that's pretty much what it is. You want a name brand budget 45, there you go, but it's not perfect. And you shouldn't expect perfection for that price.
Appreciate you for watching. Leave me a comment. Please hit that like button for me and subscribe for more gun reviews.